Hello everybody, how's it going? Hello everybody, how are we doing today? I muted myself. Classic move. Have you guys been on any Zoom calls yet for work or anything like that where you mute yourself and you just talk for about, a solid 10, maybe 20 seconds before someone pipes up and goes, hey, Thanasi, hey, whoever, you're on mute. You got to fix that. Well, that just happened to me. I'm definitely not immune to that. So, what I got on the screen right now is something that we're actually going to check out later on. So that is the Honda head-to-head featuring Fortnite live stream. Effectively, what it is it's going to be Honda's avenue to really show. They're going to show the new Civic. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully we'll actually have some time to watch it on the stream with everybody. That could actually be really fun. We'll get the music going, and we'll have this chat going, and everyone can chime in and talk about what we feel about the new Civic, because the previous one, when it first launched, was met with some adversity. I think it's safe to say. The design wasn't something that everyone liked, so we'll see what happens with the next one. But anyway, let's get into this week's news, shall we? All right, the first thing we have on the docket is, and I swear to goodness that this is the last time that I'm going to talk about this vehicle unless I own one. I promise, because it's been 2 weeks in a row where we've talked about this car, but we have to keep talking about it because more stuff keeps coming out about it, and more good things keep coming out about it. Things that are really exciting, and things that I'm looking forward to, and things that make me want to get behind the wheel of this thing, quite frankly. So that car You guys already know what it is in advance, but that car is the Hyundai Elantra N. Now remember, this Hyundai Elantra N is the competitor to, you know, we would think the Civic Si, the GTI, and other things, but in actuality, this is actually a tweener. So it doesn't really fit the mold between being a Civic Si rival. And the reason why I say that is because the Civic Si stickers for around 24 grand, right? And it's projected that this Elantra N is going to be priced relatively similarly to the Veloster N, which means that it comes in at around $30,000 to $32,000. So it puts it at about $5,000 less than the Civic Type R, but it puts it at almost $10,000 more than the Civic Si. And the good news with the Elantra N is we finally got the details that we wanted about the car. And those details are, 1, 276 horsepower, 289 pound-feet of torque. 2, limited slip differential, thank goodness. 3, you can get either a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed dual clutch. Again, that dual clutch is a wet dual clutch, not a dry dual clutch like you find in their Hyundai Ioniq, Kia Soul, or other products. 4, it has a multi-link rear suspension, which replaces the torsion suspension in the regular Elantra. The GLI relationship used to do this for Jetta often, where they would have a torsion setup in the regular Jetta, but then they went to multi-link for something like the GLI, and that's exactly what the Elantra N is doing here. And 4, adaptive dampers. Love to see that, right? Because that's what gives you the sort of comfort on daily driving, but also that firmness that you need when you're going on a back road or on a track or something like that. And 5, it's got big brakes. 13.6-inch rotors in the front, 12.4 in the rear. This thing's coming to play, and this shot right here is its best angle, I think. I actually think it looks really good from this angle. And you can tune in now. There's a lot of people that have clips of this car running, clips of this car driving. You can hear it for yourself. I mean, it's largely uncamouflaged right there. I mean, I think what you see is what you get. There's just a bunch of little ends on there, but they're not hiding everything. So while it looks pre-dented from the factory, if you will, it largely is the car that you're looking for. I mean, I think if you want a sedan, if you want something front-wheel drive, if you want something fun, hell, take the front-wheel drive out of it. If you want something fun to drive, but you don't like the quirkiness of the Veloster N, this is your car. It's got more power than the Civic Type R. Again, it makes 276 horsepower, 289 pound-feet of torque. So that's a good 80 horsepower more than a stock Civic Si, and a good 20 horsepower more than a stock GTI and GLI. It's got the torque, 289. That's a lot of torque, right? That's that's a pretty sizable figure, and it's going to be one that's definitely going to send this thing off to the races pretty quickly. I'm really excited for this car, as you can tell by the fact that I've shown this car for 3 consecutive weeks on the MoneyShift podcast. And I know what you guys are saying. Thanasi, I have had enough of your Hyundai obsession. Are you paid by Hyundai? No. No, I am not. Yes, I may have owned a Genesis at one point, but I am in fact not paid by Hyundai. But if Hyundai wants to pay me, hit me up. Moving on, we have a host of reveals that have come out both today and that are coming tomorrow and in the coming days. And I'm going to touch on one of them quickly here. This is the Infiniti QX55. And much to your belief, or much to your, I don't know what the right word is here. I'm sure you're not surprised that Infiniti is getting in on this game. But what the QX55 is a luxury SUV competitor to things like the X4, the GLC Coupe. So what does that mean? That means this is effectively an Infiniti QX50 with the ass cut off. Because, you know, Infiniti was really struggling for new cars, new vehicles. Everything was outdated except for the QX50, and even that had a really outdated infotainment system already stock from the factory. So what says new? What says appealing? What says intriguing? Quite like lopping the ass end off of a QX50, and boom, now you have a coupe. Even though it's an SUV, even though it has 4 doors. So that comes out tonight. The debut, I believe, is at 8:45, and I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't care about this at all. But here at MoneyShift, we want to show you everything so you are up to date on all topics and always ready to go amongst the car water cooler, if you will. So with that means I'm going to show you the QX55. But also tonight is the reveal of the 11th generation Honda Civic. And if we keep this podcast going long enough, maybe we can tune in here, right? So as you see here on my left, question mark? This is the Twitch stream. So Honda is actually revealing the Civic, the 11th generation, for the first time on Twitch. They're claiming this is the first time a car has ever been revealed on the platform. It is in an hour, and hopefully we're going to be recording that long and we can watch it together. It's going to be a lot of fun. But that's something I'm really excited for. If you've seen any of the concepts or the previews of that, we have a post on the MoneyShift Facebook page and Instagram. You can see and feel that this is more of a sedan-looking Honda Civic. The current generation Honda Civic sedan really does resemble a hatchback in a lot of respects. If you didn't know and I told you it was a hatchback, you wouldn't necessarily scoff at that concept. But the new one, the 11th generation Honda Civic, does in fact reveal a more sedan-like body. It does look the part. So we'll see how that goes. But again, that is in an hour and 18 minutes. Joe Scott says, 392 Wrangler, so I can tow a trailer for my doors. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, you're ahead of me there. The 392 Wrangler did drop today. I'm really excited about that. Other things that are dropping within the next few days, we have a Huracan STO Evo coming out, which is supposed to be the hottest version of the Huracan before that car is replaced. Again, the Civic drops at an hour 18. The Infiniti QX55 drops tonight. Tomorrow, we have the BRZ, which we might go live for, we'll see. And also the Maybach S-Class. So there's a lot of stuff coming in the pipeline over the next few days. So stay tuned to the MoneyShift channel on Facebook. Stay tuned to the MoneyShift channel on Instagram for you guys to maintain your up-to-date status. Speaking of 392 Jeeps, Joe, let's get into it, shall we? This is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. Here it is. It's finally out. It's a thing. Jeep showed this on the debut of the Bronco. If you guys remember when the Bronco came out, Jeep tried to cut it off short in the morning by showing off a concept to a V8 Jeep Wrangler, saying that, hey guys, this is coming. Look forward to it. It's going to be great. And then the Bronco came up, blew up the Wrangler spot. Everyone wants a Bronco. Everyone and their mother wants a Bronco. But Jeep finally unveiled the V8 Wrangler. How's it going, Steve? Hope you're well. And here it is. So the V8 Wrangler leverages the 5.7-liter engine out of every single Dodge product. It has 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. This Wrangler does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, which is insane. Hi, Patricia. Which is insane. It does a quarter of a mile in 13 seconds, which is also insane for a Wrangler. Right? You got to remember, this is an off-road first machine that is doing a quarter mile in 13 seconds, which I know we are dissuaded and maybe put off by a 13-second quarter mile time because we see, you know, stock McLaren 720S's doing the quarter mile in 10 seconds, or E63s and other machines doing the quarter mile in shorter time. But I assure you, 13 seconds is incredibly fast, especially when it's a freaking Wrangler. Okay? Let's not forget here that this is a Wrangler that is doing this, okay? Towing capacity, 3,500 pounds still. Not sure how I feel about that. I think that is a remarkably low number, but as Joe alluded to before, it is enough to tow your doors. So while this might not be the car that you want to sort of tow your machine, being like towing your, your Challenger, if you will, it's still pretty capable. I mean, these cars were never designed to tow, so because of that, they don't have the suspension setup and everything else like a tow rig would, like a pickup would, like a full-size SUV would. So I don't know if maybe we just expected that number to go to the moon because it had a V8 power plant, but at the end of the day, the chassis doesn't change. So the fact that it's 3,500 pounds, which, by the way, matches the Bronco number. I believe the Bronco was 3,300 for towing, if I remember correctly. And Joe, you put it correctly. Imagine a 392 Wrangler doing a dig from a stop and scraping the hitch because it's just squatting. More details, though, on the Wrangler. So it has a functional hood scoop. So this hood scoop that you're seeing here in this first shot is actually functional. There's 392 badging. There's a quad exhaust. It has a 2-inch higher lift than a regular Wrangler so that you can look down on the peasants that are driving regular 6-cylinder or 4-cylinder Wranglers. It also has a strengthened chassis. They strengthened it with more steel and upgraded the front control arms and installed a full-time 2-speed transfer case. This thing has Dana 44 axles with electronic locking diffs, Fox shocks, stock 33s, and no pricing. We don't know how much this thing's going to cost, but whatever it costs, it'll likely retain that value for the better part of its entire lifetime, because at the end of the day, this is a Jeep. They didn't change much on the inside. Sorry about that. What did I launch here? I hear noises. Okay. Anyway, we're good. Oh, Jill Pham with the share. Hi, hello. That's what the noise was. It was an alert noise that scared the ever-living piss out of me. That's that's what just happened. Thanks for that, Jill. Appreciate it. But yes, so back to the Wrangler. Wow, that threw me off. The Wrangler Rubicon 392 is only a 4-door, and it only comes in automatic, and it only comes in 4-wheel drive. So I actually, when the 392 concept first launched, I was really excited because I wanted a 2-door version with the V8, because I thought, what would be cooler, like Joe mentioned, doing a dig from a stop, scraping the hitch in your 2-door Wrangler with 33s. But alas, that dream will not come true. I will be forever relegated to a 4-door Wrangler, which I don't like. I like the 2-door better. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Do you like the 2-door Wrangler better or the 4-door? Let me know. Let me know in that comment section. I appreciate that. On to something that I actually was really interested in this last week. Something that kept me really like eyes glued to the screen all week. I don't know about you guys, but during this quarantine, because we've been in this for about or around what feels like 13 years, I've exhausted any and every television show option. I think there's a couple series left to binge, but there's not much left. And because of that, I'm striving for content, right? So the fact that there's a lot of releases today, a lot of releases tomorrow, and things like that, that keeps me going. But what kept me going last week was Porsche's Unseen series. So I talked about this a little bit 7 days ago, but we'll touch on it again. Effectively, what Porsche did was for 7 days, they showed off cars that they just didn't end up making. Cars that they almost produced, or cars that they just wanted to design but didn't release. And these were concepts that weren't seen ever. Maybe one of them, I believe, was leaked. But for the most part, none of these concepts saw the light of day. And I want to highlight a couple of these because I thought a couple of them, I mean, all of them were really interesting, but a couple of them were really, really cool. And I was actually incredibly bummed by the fact that they didn't come to production. Joe says, previously owning a JKU 4-door, meaning Wrangler, I would go 2-door if I bought one again. I totally agree. 2-door Jeeps for sure. 100%, Patricia, you're totally right. All right, moving on to the Porsche stuff. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the 911 Vision Safari. So this thing came out in 2012, and it was meant to celebrate the 78 911 SC car, which if you guys are looking at us on Facebook, if you're looking at us on Instagram, there is a picture that I accompanied with the post of this car of that 78 911 SC. So check us out on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, and you'll be able to see that. But this is a running and driving example. Oftentimes with concept cars, you're left with a vehicle that's just a clay model. And we'll get to those. A lot of the cars that were shown in the Porsche Unseen series were not drivable. They were just big lobs of clay that were sculpted into beautiful machines that left you wondering what could have been, right? Jill, I love the livery as well. This thing looks awesome. And it does look very much so like that one from the 70s. If you check it out, they do really look similar. So what are you looking at here? You're looking at a 2012 911, or excuse me, it might be 2016. I might have my numbers crisscrossed here. But it has race suspension, reinforced wheel housing, race seats, a roll cage, larger bumpers, and it also has a fan mounted behind the seats that's meant to cool the driver's helmet. So the fan just plugs right into the helmet and just cools you down as you're bombing through the dunes in the middle of the desert in this awesome 911. And designer Michael Maurer actually talks about this car. He said, "I've rarely had this much fun before driving a machine." And I could see that. I mean, picture, running through the dunes in a modified 911. Sounds pretty awesome to me, right? Am I the only one? I think so. That sounds pretty cool. Excuse me. The second car that we're going to cover is the Porsche Le Mans Living Legend. Love that name, by the way. All of these names are really, really cool. Vision Safari, Living Legend, right? But what you're looking at is the first of the clay models. So unlike that Vision Safari 911 that I touched on before, which was a real machine, this is clay. So you're looking at a really, really beautiful clay model, okay? And what this was meant to invoke in you was 550 coupe. You're supposed to look at this and you're supposed to feel and understand that this resembles the Porsche 550 coupe from decades ago. And it does. It really does look like that. It has the four lights in the front, much like the 550 coupe did. It has the same sloped design. It has a split rear window. But Porsche said if this car was produced, it would have the most incredible sounding, their words not mine, V8. And can't you just see it? I know those on the podcast don't have access to the photos as they're listening to this, unless you're watching this on YouTube, but trust me when I say that this Le Mans Living Legend, you can hear the V8 that's in this car. It's just a high revving, naturally aspirated, probably something like a 4-liter that revs out to 9,000, right? Just an immense, beautiful sounding engine, right? You can just see it looking at this car. Porsche says that this was actually the basis for which the design of the Cayman GT4 came about. And I wish they hadn't told us that, because if I'd known that, I'd want this over the Cayman GT4 10 days out of 10. And I know there's some money shifters out there that have Cayman GT4s, and they are tremendous machines. But look at this thing and tell me that if you had the option to buy this instead of your Cayman GT4, you wouldn't select this. If you told me that even, I wouldn't believe you. Because there's no way. This thing is beautiful. Getting on to the second to last car from the Porsche Unseen series, we have probably what's the most mental, and that is the Porsche 919 Street. You heard that correctly, Street. And for you Porsche fans out there, you already know when I say 919 what that means, right? That means the Le Mans winning car. And you can see that if you're watching the stream, if you're here with me in the chat, which thanks everyone for joining today, really appreciate it. The Porsche 919 Street looks remarkably similar to the 919 race car, and that's because it was meant to be the street version, the street legal version of that very 919 race car, right? So what you're looking at right now is a Le Mans prototype that was stripped down to its core. This is a 1-to-1 model, so this is a step above clay, but not a real car. There is no massive wing. Instead, you see that light bar there that does have a subtle spoiler in it, and then the shark fin is retained from the 919. All of these numbers just confuse the absolute hell out of me all the time. But it still has the shark fin from the Le Mans car and still has a lot of the aero, but it's definitely toned down. Porsche said that the engine would have also come from that 919 race car, which means that is a 2.0 liter V4. That is correct. I'm not making a mistake. The race car has it. Check it. A V4. But the 919 Street would have leveraged a more extensive ERS system. So it likely would have played on that hybrid card a little more so than the 919 race car did. And I love this thing. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. And it really is a callback to that era of cars where, sure, maybe you didn't see them every day, but there were 993 and 996 GT1 machines roaming the streets. There were CLK GTRs roaming the streets, the McLaren F1, the Bugatti EB110. These were cars that you could see in person, and they were direct replicas, effectively, of the race cars they were based on. And I loved that era, right? I was definitely born in the wrong time in that sense, because that is my favorite era of racing, was the homologation period. You know, because you were produced with amazing cars, not only out of Le Mans, but in rally as well, and in other forms of racing. There are so many niche, amazingly beautiful cars, and we'll get to that. We'll have an episode of that probably in a few weeks, because there are just so many cool homologation models. I do really love checking out every single one of them. But the last one, the last car that we're going to cover today in the Porsche Unseen series, and there are more, right? There's more than just the ones that we're showing today. So if you need more content like me, go check those out. There's a van in there as well. So I'll just tease that for you guys. But the last one is one that I could not be more upset that they didn't make. And that is the Porsche 904. So again, you Porsche junkies, when I say 904, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's the car from the 60s that was lightweight, relatively low power, but just an absolute screamer. The car was incredible to drive. And this is supposed to be the new version of that car. Couple things here. This car is actually based on the Volkswagen XL1. Do you guys remember that thing? That was the car that Volkswagen created that was meant to be their hypermiler. You remember that? It got, I think, something like well over 100 mpg, had a crazy stormtrooper look to it, but what it featured was a carbon chassis. It had a carbon monocoque chassis. So when Porsche designers took that chassis and created a car over it, it just screamed 904 to them, because the 904 was a lightweight, low-ish power, momentum-driven machine, right? So what better basis to start from than a car that was meant to get a bajillion mpg and just be incredibly light? So, and that's exactly what this is. The 904 leverages that carbon monocoque chassis and the same engine that was in the XL Sport. Volkswagen actually produced a sporty version of the XL1 called the XL Sport. Go check it out. That thing is really cool. But the engine that it featured was the 1199 engine out of the Ducati, which is a V2. So we said V4 in the Porsche 919 Street. Now we're saying V2 in the Porsche 904. It revs to 12,000. It weighs 1,900 pounds. And it does 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. You're telling me that you wouldn't be interested in this car? I wonder what Porsche's decision was not to produce this. It likely had to do with the costs of the carbon monocoque chassis and other things, but I am beyond stressed that they didn't make it. This design is gorgeous. It weighs under 2,000 pounds. It screams to 12,000 pounds. It's a Ducati engine, for Christ's sakes, that makes 200 horsepower out of a 1.2 liter engine. That's crazy. Why didn't they make this? I was so dejected to find out that they didn't produce this car. It would have been so great to see this thing and to just see it brought to light. I would have loved Porsche to produce this. And hey, who knows? Maybe if enough people comment, if enough people sort of give Porsche hell for not producing this thing, they'll reconsider and they'll produce it. Who knows? I doubt it. But I've seen crazier things before, right? So we'll see what happens in the future. But maybe, just maybe, Porsche comes out with something like this. So let's get into something a little bit uglier than this gorgeous 904. I want to talk about BMW, okay? Paul and I did an entire podcast about why we think BMW is in a horrible place as a company. For one, their designs are just getting progressively more outlandish for the sake of getting outlandish, right? It doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason with the design of these cars. They're just doing it just to do it. They're not listening to their fan base. At least that's what it feels like. But then they come out with cars like this, and it almost affirms that belief, right? Presenting to you all the BMW iX. Here it is, in the flesh. This is BMW's new electric SUV, and these are the details. For one, this SUV has 2 electric motors that make over 500 horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, which, by the way, is slower than a V8 Wrangler. Its range is 300 miles, which is great. That's the benchmark sort of for electric cars these days, is that 300-mile mark to avoid as much range anxiety as possible. If you leverage a 200 kilowatt-hour charging system, you can get 70% charge in just 40 minutes. And in 10 minutes, you can get 75 miles worth of charging. That's pretty substantial. Excuse me. That's a really quick time to charge. Especially if you're telling me I have to go to a rest stop and wait 40 minutes to get 70% of my charge back. That's not bad. I know that's a lot longer than it takes to, fill up a tank. But in the same vein, 70% at 300 is a good amount of miles. So that'll likely get you to most locations, unless you're cannonballing across the country, right? But one of the things where this BMW iX gets interesting, other than the fact that it has a hexagonal steering wheel, but I love that actually iDrive location. If you look at that on the bottom, that sort of wood panel with a clear glass, that is the iDrive controller. Where it gets interesting is BMW's campaign around this iX. It seems as though they're just at their fan base's throats, and they just don't care anymore. The things that they're saying are pretty crazy. Let me pull some up right now. So they released this car with an ad campaign that said, "Can't you make electric?" So, sorry, let me set the scene. Let me back up here. So this ad campaign for the BMW iX is showing you the car. It's showing you people interacting with the car. And during this entire video, BMW is putting up messaging. And these are likely angry tweets, if you will, from just people. So some of those were, "Can't you make electric cars look like normal?" Or, "Are you still making cars for normal people?" Or, "Let me unsee this," which, by the way, was my favorite one to see in this ad because, I don't know, did you guys see the front grille on this thing? Yikes. But anyway, they kept going. They went a step further. They released a tweet that, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that it was an actual thing. It was titled Boomer, because, remember when that sort of like okay boomer phase was just all the rage? They released a tweet that just said, "Okay boomer," like, when can you start being modern? Like, you have to change. Change is good, right? We are change. Look at this thing. This thing is change. Don't be stuck in the past. Join us at BMW. We're the future. And that just seemed to me like something that is just not a good idea. Now, I can understand wanting to adjust and wanting to adapt to modern style, right? You're creating coupe SUVs because that's what people want. I get that. But to then try and blast the fan base that buys your vehicles by saying, you're a boomer because you don't like how this looks and you can't embrace change. I understand that this thing looks like it's right out of Tron or Fifth Element or something like that, but it doesn't mean we have to get there today. I didn't appreciate BMW's statement. I actually didn't mind that ad campaign where it was just like, look at all the negatives people are saying, and in spite of that, we're going to produce this thing. But then to take it a step further and to just call their entire fan base that doesn't like this boomers is dumb, because for one, they're the ones that can afford this BMW iX. The majority of their customer base is probably people in that age bracket. I find it hard to believe that it's, people under 30 that are going to be in the BMW iX, shopping cart world where they're going to be buying this thing in droves. I highly doubt that that's going to be a thing. And then for two, it's just why make a statement that drastic for something that is so glaringly ugly? Right? They had to know the response they were going to get. There's no way they didn't do focus groups or things like that where they get a bunch of people in a room, show them the design, and really get what that feels. There's no way that they didn't have market research when they were designing this BMW iX, which makes it even more frustrating that they went to this level, because at that same time, it just sounds like you're not listening to your audience, right? It's like Chevrolet when they produced the Pontiac Aztek and all the focus groups. It was not a hit. Everyone was very much against it. By the way, that car probably would succeed today just because it effectively predated overlanding, right? Offering an in-car tent, which is way ahead of its time. But anyway, this doesn't. Listen to your focus groups. When Pontiac didn't listen to its focus group, the Aztek failed. It failed miserably. Bob Lutz just made it just to make it. He said, F what anyone says. I'm Bob Lutz. I'm going to make this. I know what's best. He was wrong. And so is BMW with this iX. 100%. They are wrong. Very, very wrong. I couldn't believe when I saw that tweet. It was really, really bad. The last thing that I want to touch on today is something it's been bothering me. I've been getting kind of stressed about it because I think a lot of people are right. And I don't think a lot of us are okay with hearing this, especially us at the MoneyShift podcast, where we've been sort of praising a lot of the things that Toyota has done for the last couple months. When Toyota produced the A90 Supra, okay, what they told us was that they didn't have the development costs to create an A90 Supra, so they sourced out a lot of that R&D, a lot of that development to BMW. And what happened is they were able to create a car, this Toyota Supra, that leveraged, 99% of BMW parts. Now, I understand, okay, that Toyota worked with BMW. They QA'd everything, and it was a symbiotic relationship. It wasn't just like BMW made a car and Toyota stamped the logo on it, and now it's the same car. It's evident by the fact that the Z4 and Supra drive very different, right? Even though they're largely the same car. But one of the things that Toyota said was that, the Supra would not be able to exist were it not for BMW's help, in that they didn't have the ability to create a Toyota Supra. They didn't have the funds. They didn't have the drive or whatever to do it on their own. So they had to outsource it. So they went to BMW. But then they produced this. What I'm showing on screen right now, for those of you listening to the podcast, is the Toyota GR Yaris. Now, the GR Yaris is the homologation for the Rally Toyota, right? The WRC car. And we've talked about this thing in the past. It's a 1.6 liter, I believe it is, 3-cylinder turbo. This thing does 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. It's full-time all-wheel drive, 50-50 power delivery that can be split 60-40 or 30-70, which is awesome, but it's full-time 4-wheel drive. This thing is mental, okay? And this is all Toyota. You don't open the hood and see a BMW badge. You don't open the door and see a BMW badge. And that is where I have a problem. Because now that everyone is getting their hands on the GR Yaris, everyone can't stop raving about it, okay? Every single review you see about this car, it all ends in the same vein. Each reviewer harps on a monumental car for them, right? Hey, Todd, thanks for liking the stream, man. I appreciate that. Again, the alert noise has completely foiled me. Thank you, Todd, again, for liking the stream. The alert noise has foiled me and likely destroyed everyone's earbuds that's listening to this on headphones. I definitely need to alter that sound wave. So I apologize for everyone that is listening to this on headphones that Todd blew out their eardrums. Todd, you should feel bad for that. I'm just kidding. So anyway, back to the GR Yaris. everyone mentions, right? They say, when I was a reviewer and I first got my start, the car that lifted me off my seats, the car that I can't stop thinking about, it was the Ferrari F40. It was the BMW 1M. It was, you name it, car XYZ. And now they're all lopping in the GR Yaris into that class. The car is that good. And Toyota produced it by themselves. They didn't need help. And this is a car that you would argue has more development costs than something like a Supra because of how fundamentally different it is than an existing Yaris. Right? This is definitely something that they're losing money on, whereas with the Supra, they're able to, standardize it and just pump it out. It's not a fundamentally different car than the regular Yaris. So there lies my problem. One, that we don't get this thing. Look at it. I mean, would you just look at it? It's awesome. I would have one of these in my driveway tomorrow if Toyota announced this. But two, that Toyota was able to produce such an amazing car, a car that receives so much acclaim that I honestly believe it feels like Toyota paid off everyone to get all of these beautiful reviews, but they didn't. They just produced a really awesome car. And they did it by themselves. They didn't need BMW. They didn't need Subaru. They did it by themselves. That's what's frustrating to me. I can't it just kills me. It kills me because I support the Supra 100%. I am happy that BMW stepped in. I'm happy that they were able to create an inline six turbo rear-wheel drive car that builds on everything the MK4 Supra is. I am happy that the A90 exists. By the way, shout out to Art of Attack, and Jackie Ding and everyone at GTA Finals that ran the A90 Supra and ran it hard. What time is it? Did I miss the Civic reveal? Jill, I believe you did not. The reveal goes later on. I'll check with you. I'll check for you right now as we're talking about the GR Yaris, but it should be coming up very shortly. Let's see. It is live in 48 minutes, so you got plenty of time, Jill. Don't worry about it. Grab some dinner, grab a drink, get ready, sit down, put it on the TV. You got 48 minutes till the head-to-head Honda featuring Fortnite stream goes live for the Honda Civic. But the GR Yaris is a car that should have come to the U.S., and it shows that Honda. Jill, you got me screwed up here. It shows that Toyota didn't need BMW. And it was probably just a cost-saving measure, and I can't fault them for it because the final product is really great. But at the end of the day, it's just frustrating, isn't it? Isn't it annoying? Yeah. Jill just goes, thanks, I have time to test drive a Supra. That you do. And report back. Let us know how it is. I'm a big fan of that car. They are very great. But with that, brings us to the Q&A section, right? Before we get to the Honda Civic reveal, if we have enough time for that, it seems like we have 48 minutes, so we might have to either come back live or just talk about that car next week. What questions do you have for the MoneyShift team? And none is fine. I don't mean to spring this on you, okay? But us as a podcast, we really do love talking about anything and everything automotive related. So whether that is a question related to what car I'm considering to buy, or whether that's a question to what are your thoughts on X, Y, or Z, let me know. We want to hear about it. We want to read about it. We want to talk about it. So one of the things that was asked was the BRZ reveal. Tim asked us, he says, Thanasi, what do you feel about the FRZ? Jesus. The BRZ reveal. What are your thoughts on it? How do you think it's going to go? And I'll tell you, I think it's something where you got to brace yourselves. And the reason why I say you got to brace yourselves is because I think we're in for a world of internet pain with the launch of the BRZ tomorrow, and that's not because the car isn't going to be good. I actually think it's going to be great. But what it's probably not going to feature is enough power. And we've said this, we've talked about this on the show about 100 bajillion times, and every time we come back to the fact that it is okay that the BRZ doesn't have, 280 horsepower. It's fine that it has 205. That's what the car was meant for. It was meant to be modified. It was meant to be a momentum car. And it does. It's great. The car's a blast. Okay? And I'm pretty positive, again, there's no confirmation, so everything that you hear, read, talk about is speculation, but I'm pretty positive that the next generation of the BRZ, which, by the way, is not coming to Europe, suck it, is going to be naturally aspirated, is likely going to have in the neighborhood between 200 to 220 horsepower. And it's likely going to piss a lot of people off. That said, I'm a big fan of what the design is shaping up to look like, and I'm hopeful that it has between that 220 to 240 mark, because I do feel as though that is the sweet spot for the car, and it's one where it won't feel gutless. The current BRZ FRS products definitely do feel gutless. They feel as though you're searching for power, and that's not even something you get in the ND Miata, which is something that has less horsepower, but it has a lot less weight. So there's that, trade-off there. So I'm really excited for this. Again, it comes out tomorrow, so if everyone that's watching wants an update on that car, be sure to follow us on Facebook at MoneyShift Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at MoneyShift_. I will be posting all the photos and all the details from the BRZ reveal. So stay tuned for that. Check it out. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a great car. If they can keep it under $30,000 for a base BRZ, that's going to be money. Because what other car exists that is rear-wheel drive under $30,000 new? Besides the Miata. And even then, if you stretch the Miata a little bit, you get well over that 30K mark. I think the RF Club and the Miata Club cost somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 36K MSRP when you factor in the options that you want, which is the Brembos, which is the BBS and other things. Now, they're great used buys, but they're not good new buys. Seems as though we have a shorter question time than usual this week. So I appreciate everyone for joining. The chat was awesome. Thank you guys for checking us out on YouTube, on Facebook. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, just a brief reminder that we are live every Tuesday on Facebook, on YouTube. Check us out, join the conversation, have fun, see the cars that we're talking about on the podcast in person, and see my face. And enjoy it. It's quarantine time, so my beard is bigger than ever. And it shows if you watch the live stream. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We will see you next time. Goodbye.